For all of the candidates, this is a huge night. Underperform tonight, and that could be the end of their bid to become President of the United States. There were once 24 people in the race. That's fallen away to a mere 10 who will be on stage tonight. Of them, there are 3 front runners. Former Vice President Joe Biden was the out-and-out front runner, the home and away favourite for all money, and yet in the last few weeks he started making slip-ups, getting facts wrong, names wrong. And some are asking, at 78, that's how old he'll be when he took the presidency, is it just too old? Hot on his heels and ahead in one recent poll is Elizabeth Warren. Unlike Joe Biden, who was, of course, Barack Obama's vice president, she's very critical of the way the Democrats have behaved in the past. Far too cozy with corporate interests, she says. Not interested enough in social justice or the environment. She wants to forgive student debt and have government-funded healthcare. That sort of package, that left-wing package, used to be the sole preserve of Bernie Sanders. Now he's got competition. He'd be 79 if he became president. Is he too old? Is his flame burning out? Well, there's no coincidence why they've come here to Texas. This is a key state for the Democrats. It's traditionally a strong Republican stronghold, but evidence recently that their grip is beginning to fade. And if they could flip Texas, well, it's very difficult to see how Donald Trump could stay president. I've been touring this state over the last few days and have found that the same divisions that divide Democrats nationally also divide Democrats in Texas. This is about as far from the national campaign trail as you can get. Laredo, in the far south of Texas on the border with Mexico, is true blue Democrat country, and not much looks likely to change in that. But that doesn't mean there isn't a fight going on.
This campaign is for la gente. It's for la raza. It's for the people of South Texas.
Jessica Cisneros is part of a new wave of what are known as Justice Democrats. More left-wing, more radical, and very critical of the compromises of the past.
Our congressman claims to be a Democrat, but he's voted with Trump nearly 70% of the time, and he's Trump's favorite Democrat.
She's campaigning to unseat the sitting Democrat congressman.
He's received an A rating from the NRA.
It's the same path that got fellow Justice Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into Congress. I met Jessica in Laredo on the U.S. side of the Rio Grande River. The far bank is, of course, Mexico.
Henrique was elected when I was 11 years old, and I'm 26 years old now, and things haven't changed. This is a progressive race that we're running down here in South Texas, and it's very exciting to see that we're having conversations about Medicare for all and raising the living wage and raising awareness about the climate crisis as well. Those are things that my opponent hasn't wanted to start conversations about because he's, trying to cater to his outside corporate interests, but this is something that we're starting down here.
Cars crossing into the US in Laredo. It's a big dividing line in American politics too. Just how tough should the rules be? Some radical Democrats want the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE, abolished.
I really do believe that the humanitarian crisis that we have here has been created by this administration. So there's someone that's voting with Donald Trump and enabling his agenda. We need that person out.
And when people tell you actually elections are won in the center, they're won in the middle where there's the common ground, what do you say?
I mean, this district is not one that's in the middle. This district is one that also aligns itself with progressive values. And I could say that because in the 3 months that we've been knocking on doors, people have been very excited about our progressive platform.
300 miles away in Houston, the Democrats are targeting other types of voters.
So actually, we're going to need another section.
This is the office of Carla Braley, vice chair of the Texas Democrats. We're in Harris County, which, after last year's midterms, is now in Democratic Party hands. Carla Braley's job is to repeat this switch for the whole of Texas. Do you think the Democratic Party, should have a message for people who voted for Trump?
Yeah, message that we are here for you. We care. We are listening. We're going places that we may have not massaged in the same way in some of the past elections. And I think there's always hope for people. I think, and there's always hope that people can change their mind. But, sometimes I find, even as a candidate, if we don't ask them to vote, that plays a role. Some people really need a knock on the door. Some people really need a phone call. They need a visit. They need to be able to go and attend a town hall meeting. They need to be engaged.
There's certainly plenty of engagement going on here.
And if you want to, we'll stay and do selfies.
Presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren is holding a rally in Austin, Texas. Despite what looks like an endorsement from someone above the president, it's unlikely that anyone here voted for Trump. Elizabeth Warren is on the left of the party.
We have to think about how to get power in the system to balance out the power of these giant corporations. We need more power in the hands of workers. That means make it easier to join a union and give unions more power when they negotiate.
This is where the Democratic presidential contest is right now. Left-wing progressives like Elizabeth Warren and fellow frontrunner Bernie Sanders trying to energize a new generation of voters with radical policies.
A priority for the United States of America.
And the more or less sole centrist in the contest, former Vice President Joe Biden, who thinks the party must appeal to more mainstream voters if it wants to win. In that sense, it's a very similar debate than the one that's been raging in the UK Labour Party in recent years. Back in Austin at the Warren rally, Jessica Cisneros is waiting nervously. It's a big night for her. Senator Warren is going to endorse her campaign to unseat the sitting Democrat congressman.
Jessica Cisneros, Texas 28. We're going to get this done.
It was amazing. I can't even describe it. It was great to feel the energy of the crowd, and it's awesome that all these people believe in taking back our government and making sure that it works for us.
The crowd here clearly loves it, but how many former Republicans have been won over? At the moment, that's not the job of this campaign. It's to convince Democrats to pick her as a candidate. But at some point, there has to be a conversation with mainstream America. And the question is, will those middle voters be listening? Well, the debate kicks off in a little over 3 hours' time. As the 10 candidates arrive here at the Southern Texas University in Houston, they'll see an aircraft flying overhead, paid for by the Republican Party, dragging a banner that says socialism will kill Texas economy. Now, it's clear that Donald Trump wants to face a left-winger come November 2020. He thinks that that part of the party is very beatable for him. But one thing we know about Donald Trump is he's been wrong plenty of times in the past. Katie.
Thanks, David. David Grossman there in Texas. And I'm joined now by Lissa Muscatine, former speechwriter to Bill and Hillary Clinton, and the political analyst and pollster Scott Rasmussen. And if we start with you, thank you so much for coming in. Scott Rasmussen, what is the state of this race right now? I mean, we've heard all this talk about front runners. Do you buy into that? How are you seeing it?
Well, look, there's no doubt, whether you look at the national polls or the state polls, that Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren are the top three candidates. But they're all older white candidates trying to appeal to a younger, diverse, and very progressive party. So I think there's going to be an undercurrent looking for somebody else to enter that top tier. Don't know who it is, but there's 7 people on the stage tonight who will be vying for that role. When you look at the earliest state polls, it's very close, and I think we're likely to find out very early in this process whether Joe Biden has a chance to be the nominee. If he wins in Iowa, wins in New Hampshire, well, then it looks like he will go all the way. He would certainly be favored to go all the way to the nomination. But if he stumbles in those early states, all bets are off. Right now, 4 out of 10 Democratic voters say they're either supporting Joe Biden or they're undecided. If he stumbles, all of those voters are up for grabs.
And Lissa Muscatine, I mean, how do the Democrats position themselves? We've seen it in the UK with our Labour Party. Do they say to the centre? Do they go more, bold and to the left? Do the Democrats know which strategy will work? A more radical one, do you think, or a conservative one?
Well, I wonder if that's even the right way to frame it. I think they err in allowing themselves to be divided that way, and it's certainly been the framework supplied by the press. But, I think the Democratic candidates that are going to be on that stage tonight need to remember that they represent a party that is really in step with the vast majority of Americans in terms of their positions on issues, be it climate change, be it health care, be it income equality, be it gun control, be it women's right to choose. The Democrats are the party favored on those issues by most Americans hugely, and Donald Trump is pushing the Republican Party further and further to an extreme of an old, outdated view of a sort of ethno-nationalistic white America. To that extent, I think if the Democrats, whoever the nominee is, can just remind people what the Democratic Party stands for generally and broadly, and that it is a big tent, they can hopefully work out the details later.
Scott Rasmussen, is that right? I mean, does that make Trump beatable if they stick in that territory? Is he beatable, and who's best placed to do it?
Well, the biggest challenger that Donald Trump is going to face in his re-election battle is the U.S. economy. If the economy goes into a recession or is seriously struggling next year, any of the leading Democrats would be likely to emerge victorious. On the other hand, if the economy is going very strong, any of those Democrats are likely to begin as an underdog. The challenge for Democrats is very real between that centrist view and the more progressive view, simply because if we have a close election, if it looks like we're heading into a repeat of 2016, the Democrat who is nominated will probably appeal somewhat to the progressive base of the party and then have to figure out how to win over Midwestern voters in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, states that Donald Trump shocked everyone by winning the last time around. And there's an awful lot of skepticism once you dig beneath the surface of the policy issues. People like the idea of making sure every American has access to health care, but only 18% think it's a good idea to ban private health insurance companies. People like the idea of better treatment of people who are trying to enter this country, and we have sympathy for refugees and recognize, in fact, 8 out of 10 Americans recognize that legal immigration is good for America, but 8 out of 10 also believe that illegal immigration is bad. And so you get into the details of those policies, and a lot of voters are going to be conflicted.
And Lissa Muscatine, you worked with Hillary Clinton. What do you think the Democrats have learned from that campaign, from what went wrong last time?
Well, I think whichever Democrat becomes the nominee, and we can already see this playing out in certain ways this early. And by the way, Bill Clinton hadn't even decided to run, or and certainly hadn't announced at this point in 1991 before the 1992 campaign. I think that they all have to be able to connect their story, their personal narrative, with their values and their vision for the country. And whoever can become consistent at that and show authenticity around that, I think can resonate almost in spite of whatever their ideological differences are. If a candidate can't do that, they can't give voters a really good answer as to why they are seeking the presidency, it's going to be very, very hard to win. But I think you see the rise of Elizabeth Warren in the last 4 or 5 months, in part because she has been able to convey to people how her own history, her own life story does connect to what they're facing and how she plans to solve their problems. Now, some of her ideas may be pie in the sky, they may be too far to the left, and it'll be interesting to see what she does about that. But in terms of the narrative and connecting it to the vision for the country that people need to believe and feel is authentic, we'll have to watch and see who does that well.
And Scott, briefly, because we're running out of time, this candidate's got to unite the party. Last time round, we saw what happened with Bernie Sanders. Quite a lot of the people who he appealed to, those Democrat foot soldiers, didn't turn out for Hillary in the way that, they're going to need to this time for a different candidate. Will those foot soldiers turn out for a more conservative candidate?
I believe that Donald Trump will be the greatest motivator to get all of those Democrats to turn out. That is the motivating force of the Democratic Party. People may have a preference for one candidate or the other, but once the nomination is decided, unless there is a horrific split or another, bad taste in the mouth of the way the nomination was decided, I think the Democrats will turn out heavily. The real question is going to be, will some of those Trump supporters who showed up in 2016 return to the polls? Will people who dislike Donald Trump but voted for him as the lesser of two evils, will they show up? And that could be decisive in a close election. But the Democrats will be there.